Hello again, welcome to another My Sporting Life from Sheffield Live TV. Now, in order to have a great sporting life, you don't have to be a great sports star, which is very fortunate for a lot of us who make a living out of talking and in some cases commentating on sport. And there's no longer running football commentator, I think I'm right in saying, in this country and possibly in the world, than John Helm.
Thank you for that. Funnily enough, I heard somebody saying the other day, "Ooh, there's a blast from the past," as he went past me at Burton Albion.
Is that right? Well, you're also a blast from the present and the future as well. Look, I've got to say you're 83 years old. I just get that out of the way first, even though you don't look it.
8th
you don't
of July
sound
1942.
And you don't feel it, do you?
No, I don't, absolutely. I think the thing I'm most grateful for, Alan, in my career is longevity. I started on August the 17th, 1959 at a newspaper called the Shipley Times and Express. And here I am, still going and still looking forward to every assignment.
1959, I'm doing a quick sum here. 41 years plus 25.
66. Try 66.
66.
Clickety click. 66
years. And talking of 66, obviously World Cup, you weren't involved in that, but you've done a few, haven't you? You've done a few World Cups. How many is it now?
I've done 10. Interestingly, on the day of 1966, we all know what happened, but I was playing cricket for Baildon in the Bradford League, and astonishingly, both teams were all out for 32, and the match finished at 10-3. I wonder why that was.
that is orchestrated.
Yes,
to finish.
Not fixed. Not fixed. No. 10-3 finished. We were in the bar at 5-3.
That's perfect.
Absolutely
perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, John, look, he doesn't need a lot of background information, but this guy, as I say, has been around forever. Primarily, I think it's fair to say, commentating on football, but he's also covered got cricket, golf, and another love of yours, rugby league. Loads of tournaments. You'll go anywhere for a game of football, won't you?
Well, just back from Singapore, by the way, where I was covering water polo, which was one of my 39 sports I've covered. 39? Not very well, some of them. Believe you me.
I might ask you before the end of this show to list them. And also, by the way, I'm going to ask John to do his party trick, which is to recite all 92 Football League clubs, actually as they were, because they're constantly changing. We'll do that before. You do it in about 30 seconds or something?
Yeah, the record was 26 seconds, which I did in the Guinness Book of Records for that as the world's fastest speaker. Not that I am really, of course.
Well, there we are. It's just incredible. We have, I wish we got longer. We've only got about 45 minutes, but that'll have to do. From journalism, you went to BBC Radio Leeds, also to BBC Radio Sport nationally, which was with Radio 2 at that
1974 that happened.
Yeah, and ITV Sport, which is how probably the majority of people know you from your commentaries. But let's go right back, because you know the start of any journalism or broadcasting career is a love of sport. But not many of us have done played it very well. But it just starts there, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
And that's where it would have started for you. You'd have played football, rugby. Did you? Well, were you any good? Were you any good at any of them?
Well, these have been a handicap. At the age of 8, I knew I was not going to be a centre forward for England because I was wearing glasses. Could have played cricket. Yeah. And amazingly, the street where I was born, Maud Avenue, Baildon, the coach of Yorkshire was Arthur Mitchell. And he lived about
fearsome
4 doors
character.
away. Oh, fearsome character. Yeah. If he said what you had to do, it cost me in the end. Ronnie Burnett, who was the captain of Yorkshire in 1958-59, lived 4 doors away on this side, Arthur Mitchell on the opposite side. 3 doors to my left was Mrs. Summers, who was the auntie of Phil Sharp, great England, Yorkshire cricketer. And I learnt shorthand thanks to Jim Laker's auntie, Mrs. Thomas. So I was born into a really cricketing environment. I've been a member of Baildon Cricket Club and Baildon Golf Club since the age of 8. I'm still the president of Baildon Cricket Club and have been for 45 years now. And I played at a decent level in the Bradford League. I was a decent off-spinner. But it was Arthur Mitchell that ruined my career, because he used to get me to go and bowl in the nets to people whose fathers were paying them to play, to learn the game. And he took me as the bowler, and then he suddenly said, "You're going to have to change." I was a leg spinner. He said, "Yorkshire never employ leg spinners, they're too expensive, you'll have to turn to off spin." And Jim Laker was my hero in many ways, and I just became 1 of 1,000. I was no better than anybody else as an off spinner. Whereas a leg spinner, I'd taken wickets by the bucket. They're as bad as Varys, actually.
Yeah, what a pity that, you know, that, and we've lacked leg spin nationally as well. You could have been not only Yorkshire's leg spinner, but England's leg spinner.
You can name them on one hand.
I've never worked out. I always knew how to bowl an off break vaguely, even though I couldn't actually execute it. Never worked out how
Turn the wrist the other way.
Is it
Basically, turn the wrist the other way, wrap your fingers around the ball.
Yeah.
And I used to have figures of 5 for 2 and 4 for 11,
Right.
and all of a sudden. And my best pal, ironically, now to this day, is Jeff Cope,
Yes.
one of the great Yorkshire and England off spinners.
Yeah.
And it could have been me.
Could have been you.
Sadly,
Yeah.
very good actually. I'm still around, whereas I would not have been around as a player had I taken that option.
No, I mean, reporting, commentating, you know, is a lifetime's work, but you know, it's an extraordinary duration that you've done it for, which I imagine you could not have possibly imagined when you started out. And how did you start out?
Absolutely not, and I have my father to thank for that. There was a gentleman called Colonel Page who lived on the same road as our family. And when I said to my dad I wanted to become a journalist, he got me in with Major Page, and he got me the job at the Shipley Times and the Express. At school, the school advisor said, "No, no chance of being a journalist. Nobody. You want to be an accountant?" I thought, "I don't want to be an accountant. You know, you want to work in a bank?" "No, I don't want to work in a bank. I want to be a journalist." And that's how I started on August 17, 1959.
Do you know, I had the same advice from a teacher. Said, no, you don't want to go into that. It's cutthroat. You're far too nice, he said, to be a journalist. There was that.
Crazy.
There wasn't it? But of course, neither you nor I would have wanted to be a news journalist. We wanted to be sports journalists, correct?
Yeah, although I was a news journalist, I did
Yeah.
7 years on the Shipley Times and Express, covering the courts and the council meetings. You know, I can still remember many of them. I remember especially court cases. Oh my goodness, I did murder trials. Yeah. And even when I moved to the Yorkshire Post in 1966, there we go again, I was a news reporter, both on the Morning Post and the Evening Post. I did some big jobs, you know, I did the Paulson trial and things like that. But whenever there was a sporting story, if the sports department didn't fancy handling it, they used to pass it to me. And one of the jobs that I did have was reporting on Leeds United winning the championship at Anfield, when none of the others fancied going for some strange reason, and
Really?
I did. Yeah, I stood on the spot at the Kop at Liverpool and covered the 0-0 draw, which won Leeds the title. And I'll never forget Don Revie Revie as he liked to be known, telling the players to go to the Kop. And Billy Brennan was joking, we'll get lynched. He said, go to the Kop. And the Kop applauded every one of them and champions, which was a phenomenal response.
And that wouldn't have happened at any other ground?
No, I don't think it would. The Liverpool
other set of
supporters
fans?
are different to anywhere. Maybe Newcastle, because they're pretty reasonable.
Yeah. So this was general news journalism. Did you find it a helpful discipline for later when you were
Yes, I think
doing
I did.
sport?
Accuracy is one thing, and in news reporting, you've got to be accurate in everything that you report, everything that you say, everything that goes in the paper. And human nature was a funny thing. I remember one of the stories, a horse called Dolly had been attacked by some youngsters at Hunslet. It had been stoned. I got food for this animal for months afterwards, you know.
Yeah.
People have such sympathy with animals, sometimes more than the human race. But I have to be accurate in my reporting of that. I remember, you know, I'll get one sentence wrong and people will be on your back, you know.
I think that's the thing with local papers, particularly with obituary reports. I found that to my cost. But anyway, that's another story. At what point did you broaden your career and think, oh, I'd rather like to get behind a microphone and
Well, funnily enough,
commentators?
as a young boy, I remember listening to the radio and listening to Raymond Glendenning and Bill McLaren and names like that, John Arlott, and I really wanted to do that, but I was willing to wait. In fact, still, when I got the call in 1970 that I had an interview at Radio Leeds, I hadn't asked for an interview, they'd come to me, which astonished me, the BBC approaching me. And I went and it was a farce. It was no interview at all, I'd got the job. But I had to go through the process. I'd been recommended by two predecessors, Alan Shaw and Jim Brady, who left the Evening Post to go to Radio Leeds. It was in its infancy, of course, just 2 years old, and they'd recommended me, and so the job was nailed on. I had to go through the facade of this stupid interview. Anyway, and then I thought, well, I became a disc jockey as well, you know. I used to do music and do the evening chat show, so I still had that interest as well, doing normal sort of interviews. But sport was my love, always my love, and I look forward so much to Friday night's programme, Saturday lunchtime. I used to do a 4.5-hour Saturday afternoon show on Radio Leeds, then a Sunday follow-up show. But I just loved every second of it. Hardly saw the wife.
And you were married at this stage?
I was married, yeah.
And you've stayed married?
I've been married a long time. I've been married 56 years.
How was that?
I don't know how that's happened. She's a very understanding wife.
Yeah, because it becomes such an obsessive career. And also, do you find that when your job is your hobby and your hobby is your job,
yes,
there ain't anything...
It's hard to separate.
Yeah.
It's hard to separate. The way my wife handled it in one way was she went to Gambia and for 22 years ran a children's charity. So good on her. You know, it was fantastic. Yeah. So she was over there helping youngsters to, you know...
And this is why the marriage has stayed together?
I think so.
Rather than the distance?
Yes. After distance, yeah, you can't be together every day.
So there you were at Radio Leeds at an exciting time for Leeds United.
Oh, Leeds United, Leeds Rugby League and Yorkshire Cricket were all champions at the same time.
And so which of those three did you get the most pleasure from, satisfaction from, buzz from?
Well, it's a very good question, Alan, is that, because cricket was my first love. As I say, I played to a reasonable standard, and I was brought up in cricket. Then when I first got into rugby league, as it was in those days, Bradford Northern were my team, and I used to go and cheer them on at Odsal Stadium. But football was the one that really hooked me. I think Bradford Park Avenue has been my club since I first saw them in 1953, beating Accrington Stanley 4-0, and the fullback Jimmy Milburn got a hat-trick, fullback scoring a hat-trick. And also, I went to the cinema as an 8-year-old and saw Pathy News, black and white, 1948-49, so I was 7. Arsenal 0, Bradford Park Avenue 1, Billy Elliott the goal scorer in the FA Cup, and wow, we've got a team here that can beat Arsenal. So I was in love with all three really in different parts, because when I went to Yorkshire Television, I'm not going to jump too far ahead, I realised that. I did a programme called Scrum Down and I couldn't wait for it. Because football was great on the Saturday, but the rugby league reception you got, you could go in the dressing room 5 minutes after the game. Everybody would talk to you, we'd do a man of the match. They were brilliant times, brilliant people to deal with. So rugby league became quite an obsession as well. Yeah,
far better access to other sports than football.
Oh, absolutely.
Which has always been a little bit hostile to.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
You've experienced.
Yeah, they keep you at arm's length in football, where they welcome you in, they embrace you. In rugby league, and cricket's a bit different as well, but that's a sport where in the field you talk with the other players and stories. I used to know Fred Truman very well and Brian Close, and I'm not name dropping here. They were wonderful storytellers. So it was fantastic how I loved all those three, and I developed a love for golf when I went to the BBC in London.
Yeah, you mentioned Bradford Park Avenue. You're still involved with them, aren't you?
I'm a vice president. We're top of the league at the moment. It's Northern Premier League East. I actually commentated on them. Very rare that I've done that. But I've been asked this season to do a couple of commentaries, and they were leading 2-0 going into added time of 6 minutes against Grimsby Borough, who scored twice. Wow. But I said at the end of it, there's still a point, and don't panic, our day will come. And at the weekend, we won away from home at Blythe Spartans with a goal in the 89th minute. Yeah. That's football. Takes you up there, drops you down there.
I saw them play at Hallam. And I think it was a 2-2 draw?
1-1.
1-1 draw.
1-1 draw.
How is your memory so photographic? You know, this was a few weeks ago and I knew it was a draw, but I got the score wrong.
Yeah. 1-1. The defender scored. Ekpolo. Right. I don't know. I've always been blessed with a good memory. I can you're going to laugh here. I can remember being a baby in nappies. I can remember crawling. Now that is extraordinary, but I'm not joking. I can remember my mother putting Johnson's baby powder under the nappy. Now that is extraordinary, isn't it?
Isn't it?
And I've been able to retain that pretty much so, which is why you're going to get me to do my party trick, I know, a little later on. Yeah. but it's all sport. If you ask me to do something else with them, I can remember politicians from a long time ago, more than now. I don't know. It's unanswerable.
It is. Have you had any medical professional look into the unique case of John
I don't
Helm?
want any medical professional looking at me at the minute. No. Not at the age of 83.
You don't know what they might find.
No.
But, most people can remember back perhaps to 3. I can remember something just before I was 3, Manchester United crash. I remember my mother saying, "Isn't it terrible about Manchester United?" I've got that in my head. So, but to remember being a baby is extraordinary, and it might help explain, why you're such a weird fella.
Weird bloke. Thanks for that, Alan. I'm glad I came. I'll see you later.
You command great affection. People like you, and you get on with people, and I think that is, perhaps the greatest stock in trade you can have in this, apart from the professional aspects.
Yeah, I like to be friendly with everybody. I don't like confrontation with anybody, literally. 1 or 2 people I don't get on with. But I think it does help. And I've always thought, in terms of football management, the greatest qualification you can have, or the greatest thing you can possess, is man management. If you can handle people, they'll forgive a lot of things. They might be the best manager, might be the best player in the world, and we can name examples of people who've been wonderful sportsmen, but never left a legacy of being popular.
Yeah, but I think most of the time, my experience, I don't know if yours, I'm not disappointed at meeting people that you look up to. And in the majority of cases,
they're good people.
They seem nice people.
Yes, that's right. There's the odd exception.
Yeah, and sometimes they're geniuses, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah, they are. They are geniuses. That's right. Who have a problem with being sociable with everybody. They can't quite cope with that. They're very focused, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, obviously George Best might have been awkward. I never.
No, he was a nice guy.
Was he?
He was a very, very, very nice guy. Was George? I'll tell you a good example. I can mention it now. The fellow's not with us anymore. Was Alex Higgins?
Oh,
he could be an absolute nightmare.
I've experienced that. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely.
Both Irish, but different types of people. No, George was a nice guy.
Yeah, as Paul Gascoigne.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is.
Yeah.
Bobby
Bobby Robson called him daft as a brush, which is possibly partly true as well.
Yeah.
There's a slight loopiness about it.
The rich characters that you'll have come across, and the one thing is, there's no right or wrong character, for instance, for a football manager. So many different types, aren't there?
Oh, absolutely. And we've been talking, I've been dealing with Michael Scabala at Lincoln City this season. What a lovely guy, and he's so helpful.
Yeah.
But there are good examples throughout life of people. When you say about the ones I've come across, I mean, the most engaging person I've interviewed in 66 years was Muhammad Ali, without a question. He was unbelievable, vibrant, clever, witty, wordsmith. Yeah, I met Nelson Mandela and interviewed him, and he had charisma. And I've always thought that's a very strange word, charisma. Don Revie again. Bill Shankly had charisma, but you wouldn't say that about every football manager, would you?
Well, certainly not now, and you'll have noticed and maybe lamented that the characters aren't there as they were.
No, they're not, and the same applies to players as well. Yeah. You've just mentioned Gascoigne and Best; they were characters, weren't they? Yeah. Stan Bowles, Peter Osgood, they are innumerable, but very few now.
Why is that, do you think?
Don't know, because if you remember World Cups, I'm going back now, 58 Pelé, Eusebio in 66 here. They've always been great characters. Messi have emerged at World Cups and become absolute star names. So the Italian striker Schillaci made his name at the World Cup in Italy. But nowadays, none seem to emerge from a World Cup. I think it's partly because the managers want team players nowadays. They want versatility, but they want team players whose ethic is solely concentrated on the 11 that are on the field that day. They don't like personality. They're a bit worried by personalities, I think.
The way the game, football is played has changed in that it would appear to be 90 minutes of all action from every player. There's no exception to the hustle and the closing down. No player will be excused doing that.
No.
Is that an aspect that's
No, the only thing that
changed?
I would disagree with slightly is that nowadays we are besotted, aren't we, by statistics. XG, I've never understood what that's all about. And we get one for the most passes. It's always the two centre-backs who pass the ball sideways and backwards to the goalkeeper, and he has the ball more than anybody else. Which, and then the goalkeeper dives on it. Thankfully this year they're trying to eradicate that with a time limit on the goalkeepers with the ball. But otherwise, yeah, you're right. I mean, it is all action, and people get plaudits for being a Brian Robson type or a Stuart McCall type. They were full of energy, weren't they?
Yes.
And that seems to be appreciated more than skill.
Dynamo players, but I probably go back to, as you will, even further to the time when a centre forward could have a fag on the the halfway line or something.
Yeah. I already mentioned Stan Bowles. That's exactly what you do. Can you imagine that?
They certainly can't now. And I don't know whether you think it's a better game. Is it much maligned at the moment? Oh, it was better then. We had those players then.
Yeah.
Is it a better spectacle now? Faster?
For me, not a better spectacle, but what it is the physicality, the fitter, the way fitter. You just mentioned smoking.
Yeah.
There is no way that today those players from the 60s and 70s would survive under the circumstances that were applied in those days. They are incredibly fit athletes now, which is probably why a lot of them go down injured. I remember Seb Coe was such a finely honed athlete that anything that was going, he caught it. Which happens, doesn't it, with these people?
Yes. He could catch a few as well, couldn't he? They couldn't catch him.
No, absolutely.
Other respects.
Oh, no.
And I don't know your highlights. I mean, you've seen so much, and fortunately, you've been able to log it there. And do you have favourite memories of commentating?
Yes, I do. And one where I wasn't actually commentating was seeing Usain Bolt break the world record, 800 metres in Beijing, I think it was. I've never seen anything like it. The man was like a rocket. And it left everybody standing. You thought, this man's on a different planet to everybody else. Yeah. I'm going through different sports. I was fortunate in 1977 to be the on-course commentator for the Nicholas Watson shootout at Turnberry, with the greatest finish there has ever been to an Open Championship. I've seen some amazing World Cup matches, Italy-Brazil in Spain '82, where I desperately wanted Brazil to win. Socrates, Falcao, Eder, Junior. The names rolled off the tongue, and they were at Zico. Fantastic to watch, and it would have been such a boost for the sport if they'd won that World Cup. They were the best team I've ever seen. Right. And I was doing the commentary. Sadly, Paolo Rossi, not for him, he got a hat-trick. Brazil made literally one mistake defensively, and they were out. And that's the other beauty, in a way, of sport. That you never know what's coming next. You think one team is so good they've got to win it, and then they don't. I mean, all of a sudden you're flat.
Yeah. What about the characters and the great professionals that you work with? BBC, ITV. You work with some doyens of
yes, I have.
Broadcasting.
It's funny that I mentioned John Arlott, and this is a funny story because I actually became producer of Test Match Special, only for 2 matches, mind you, back in 80-81, and West Indies were touring, and I got to work with John Arlott. And it was the team was Henry Blofeld, Christopher Martin Jenkins, Trevor Bailey, Fred Truman. And I arrived at Old Trafford very early and met John and said, John, we have worked together before, John Helm, anything you want, you've only got to ask. And he said, just get the temperature right. I said, temperature? He said, Bales brings the white wine about 11. Then we have the red. We have the champers about 12:30. Have anything that's going after that. And he had it in his contract never to work after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We all know why. Cornhill lunches. Wow. This is not a revelation. No. So as the producer, I had my headphones on and I'm working out the rota for the following day because they didn't all get on, I was working out who the guest was going to be. I was working out questions from the viewers or listeners, all the sort. And I was suddenly aware that John hadn't spoken for about 30 seconds. I looked at him. I went, John, he said 43 for 4. Which was astonishing, as Clive Lloyd was 123 not out at the time. But I always say, Alan, that I said I worked in the greatest ever group of commentators. Now, I don't consider myself, but there was Des Lynam, Alan Parry, Jim Rosenthal, Christopher Martin Jenkins, Chris Ray, Ian Robertson, Peter Brackley. Oh, you could go on and on and on. It was a wonderful setup, a wonderful set of people who were all so talented. Brian Butler, Peter Jones, my first, I was producer, football producer. And that was a group of talent that they all got on. That was the secret. They all got on.
I was going to ask you if there was any rivalry in terms of, who gets the the bigger matches. And
well, there was rivalry because we'd had Snatch of the Day, of course. ITV had taken us away from BBC, so there was rivalry with BBC, but they were basically David Coleman, Alan Weeks, Tony Gubber, and we fancied ourselves against them, I suppose, in a very...
Well, you got Barry Davis, John Motson.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, they had. Great names, and you were proud. Another one for us was Cliff Morgan, who was head of Outside Brock. What a great man he was, and a great rugby player, of course. Yeah, so
did you ever model yourself on any particular commentator that you?
I wouldn't say model myself. What I did, I've always said you should seek to emulate people. Never try to be them, because I've always, youngsters who come up and ask me now, I've said, just be yourself. I think that's such an important thing. Your own personality, even on radio, you can shine through. You can guess somebody's personality on radio just by listening. John Murray's a big pal of mine. He's a great broadcaster, is John Murray. And I love, sort of trying to guess who's a good guy, who's not such a good guy. Yeah. And they'll tell me. Because there are one or two you wouldn't necessarily want to go to the pub with, where the majority you would.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, I never sought to copy anybody, but I did seek to emulate them. I wanted to be as good as Des Lynam. And I was really, one thing I've been really proud of, Alan, I was still working at Radio Leeds when I was asked to be the front man on what is now 5 Live, was then Sport on 2, because Peter Jones was off, Des Lynam was off. And I was the first one ever who was still working on local radio to go down to present national. I did that a few times before I got the job permanently. That
must have been a big occasion for you. Do you ever suffer from nerves before you go on?
Yes, apprehension is probably a better thing. If you're confident in your own ability, and funnily, I read an article yesterday about Kelly Cates, and she said exactly the same thing. Or if you're out of your zone, if you're tackling a sport that you're not accustomed to, like, for example, I was asked to do what's called now artistic swimming,
synchronised swimming.
Yeah, synchronised, but it's now called artistic. I was asked to do that, and it was going out live on the BBC, and I knew nothing about it. So, but then you use your brain, and I had an expert alongside me. You just do the hello, welcome, how are we today? This is going to be a great day. Czech Republic are among the fancies for this one here. They come now, do that bit. As soon as they're in the water, over to the expert, and you learn to do that.
Yeah, I had a similar experience commentating on netball for a couple of years, but it's all good, isn't it? Because there is a kind of formula to it.
Definitely, it is an art that some people could never do it, and there have been some great presenters. Des Lynam would be one of those, and he'd admit it, that he did some boxing, but he wasn't actually a great commentator, but he was a wonderful presenter, one of the best hosts you could ever have, but not an actual commentator. Brian Butler, the voice of football, he was a wonderful wordsmith. He came out with sort of phrases you'd die for, but actual commentary, he wasn't quite as good.
No, commentary is an art that requires so much precision, and there must have been times in your career, being a human being, where you can't quite identify that goal scorer, you misidentify somebody, and you feel bad about it.
It's horrible, because it is a professional thing. You don't ever get a goal scorer wrong. I have done. It's happened, and it will happen to absolutely everybody. You're absolutely right. You're looking across into a penalty area, 3 or 4 bodies there, and the ball suddenly ends up in the net, and you think, who on earth? And of course, we haven't always got replays, monitors. I do quite a lot of commentaries now with no monitor whatsoever. So it's in the lap of the gods sometimes.
That's pretty terrifying as well, with the numbers being indecipherable or unrecognisable from a distance when they're on the back of stripes. Which
Sheffield
is
United
absolute,
this year.
They're better.
The other one that happened to me was I was asked to do off-tube commentary. Can be very difficult, where you're in a studio, you're not actually at the venue. And I was asked to do the Lev Yashin testimonial match, which was between Moscow Dynamo and the stars of the world for Eurosport in Paris. And I turned up at Paris, no team sheets ever came through. So no identification of any players. And of the 22 that started the match, I only recognised Oleg Blokhin and Rummenigge, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge. They were the only two. They had wonderful matches. Fantastic. Nobody else got a mention, apart from the groundsman, who amazingly I knew, and Yashin himself, where there were shots of him in the stand. Now that is hard.
Yeah.
when you don't know who you're talking about.
Well, exactly. I wouldn't say it's hard. I would say it's impossible.
Just about.
Quite frankly. I mean, there's been light and shade in your career, and when we talk about shade, you know, nothing can compare with the darkness that you and everybody in football or out of football in this country, around the world, felt about the Bradford City fire.
Absolutely. And it still sends a shudder up me. Even to this day, every time it gets a mention, I'm always happy to talk about it. It sends a shudder. I can feel it now.
How did you cope, not only at the time, but following it? There must have been, I'd say you still feel some trauma to this day, and it affected you. Did you go almost into automatic describing those scenes, or?
Yes, in a sense, Alan. My director was brilliant, Peter Jones. The director talks into your ear.
Yeah.
So I was the one who spotted the fire. I was looking right across at it and just saw a little glow. And so I put the talk back key to Peter Jones down and said, Peter, there appears to be a small fire. And those were my first words on air about it. There appears to be a small fire in the stand. And shuddering fact, 4.5 minutes later, it had gone. The whole stand had gone in 4.5 minutes, and 56 people had lost their lives. I like to think that professionalism over many, many years, that was 1985, so I'd been working since 1959, helped enormously. I dread to think what some people, how they'd cope when they're put under that sort of stressful situation.
You can't train or prepare for
No.
a situation like that.
No.
And, you know, it's certainly, you know, I feel I wasn't there, but every time I go to Valley Parade, I think about it. As you will do.
Absolutely, yeah.
It was a game against Lincoln City, which is coincidental because you're now heavily involved with Lincoln.
Yeah. For Lincoln, by the way, only a few weeks later, the players went away on a holiday, a break. When they came back, the plane overshot the runway at Leeds Bradford Airport. Not a lot of people sort of mentioned that because nobody died, obviously. Yeah. The other half of your question, if I can come to it now, was a good one as well. How did I react to it overall? 2 days later, I had to go on calendar, obviously, on the Sunday and the Monday. And I said to the bosses there, I need a break, I need to get away. And they were very understanding. And I went for a week's holiday. We could only get one to, I think it was Morocco at the time, or my wife obviously with me. And human nature is a funny thing, isn't it? The moment I will never, this is sending a shudder at me. We arrived in Morocco, and the carousel's going round, and this woman came up next to me and started repeating the words of my commentary. I couldn't believe it. She says, there appears to be a small fire in the stand. And I thought, who is this? If ever a man would have had a right to have hit a woman, I swear, that would have been the occasion.
Why would
anybody do that? Just nerves or whatever, I don't know. So it took me a while. I wasn't myself. I'm normally a reasonably bubbly bloke, I think you'll admit. But I wasn't myself for 6 months. And the worst thing was, the day after the fire, I had to front on television the World Speedway Championships at Odsal Stadium. I said it should have been cancelled. They said we can't, and the programme's got, and you're the only sports presenter, so I had to do it. And I agreed to do it on the understanding that no way would I smile all day. We'd have some black before I started, and I started with reference to what had happened the previous day. But it's amazing what things you're sometimes asked to do. And like this lady, I was just so stunned, I just couldn't believe it, but I've never forgotten it.
No, indeed. I mentioned Lincoln City, and you're now, but happily, this much more happily now, involved with them in a role which shows that I've got a feeling this is not the first time you've been attached to a particular club to commentate on their games.
Very rarely. I've had the odd Altrincham last season. They've been very good for the last 2 or 3 years. Hyde United have asked me to do 2 or 3. Guiseley have asked me to do one. And my own club, Bradford Park Avenue. But I've done about 4 Park Avenue matches in 50 years. But yeah, Lincoln have came along to me at the start of the season, or before the start, and said they'd like me to be involved. I said, well, how involved? I did 3 games for them, friendly matches at the start of last season. They said, we liked what you did. So I said, how often? They said, well, every match if you can. So I'm home and away. It'll involve 50 matches. Yeah. And I did 1 or 2 other things as well. I sort of front occasions for them, like when the fixtures were announced and when they opened a sports hub recently. And I'm going to do, I think, the players' Player of the Year awards and things like that.
Right. Does your wife ever say, John, you've worked hard enough now for long enough. You're going to retire and let's go off on holiday?
Well, I get the latter bit.
Yeah.
She knows me only too well. We've got a deal already. End of the season, we're off somewhere. And fully. I don't criticise her for this. She's off on a week's holiday in a couple of weeks' time. She goes away by herself for a week, just to get some sun. There are reasons personal, because her brother's in a home. He's got dementia, and so 3 days a week she has to go there, and I go a couple of days a week as well. But no, the first question you asked was, she knows how much it means to me, how much I love, and the fact I've managed to retain some form of physical well-being. Yeah. So I want to keep going as long as I can. I was hoping to the first centenarian commentator. I don't think that'll happen.
I don't know. I'm not. As we sit here, it's 17 years. I don't see why not.
No, I don't get the work that I used to get. Mostly with FIFA. I worked for FIFA for 20 odd years. And I've not had a job with them for a couple now. They sent me to Argentina, the Under-20 World Cup. I used to do 3 or 4 events a year for them, and the phone stopped ringing there. And I understand it. They've got to bring younger commentators on. That's absolutely fine.
There are mixed feelings, aren't there, in the entertainment industry and the sporting industry about when people should go. Should they go right at the top? Yeah. Or should they linger on and end up playing non-league, and Sunday league, and like Chris Waddle, for instance, in the city where we're sitting now in Sheffield, he's 64, I think, and he still kicks a ball around, and he'll play for anybody.
I think that's wonderful. In the current edition of World Soccer, there's a player called Kazimura from Japan who is still playing in his 50s, mid-50s, 55, 56, but they found somebody else. I think it's in Iceland. There's a 60-year-old professional footballer.
Is there really?
Still turns out every week at 60. Stanley Matthews, of course, was a classic example in years gone by at 50. And I think the answer to the question is, if you still feel you're up to it and good enough, then do it. You do question yourself more, though. Are you as sharp as you used to be? Of course you're not really. I will be saying something. But if these people come to you and want you to do the job, you do your best to do it to the best of your ability.
And that tells you something.
And if you want to do it, like Chris Waddle, do it.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you find football these days in terms of difficulty or challenge to commentate on? Do you think it's any more challenging than it was? I mean, it's faster. You don't have the time when guys pass back to the goalkeeper and they wander around with it, and we always used to be able to think of what you're going to say next. It's just so fluid.
Well, there are pros and cons, Alan. That's the answer. Some of it is easier because with things like Wikipedia and information you can get. I did a women's under-15 tournament in CONCACAF in Nicaragua, for goodness sake. Now, there's nothing on the internet about those players. But if I'm doing I don't know, Banbury United, I'll find things about every single player in the team. The harder side is, as you say, the game is much quicker, and people find this funny, foreign names, because, you might not have a single English player out there. Lincoln have just signed Ivan Varfolomeev from a Polish team, Slovan Liberec. He's a Ukrainian, under 21. I can find things out, but the pronunciations, I had one horrendous one this year for Reading. He's gone on loan to Swindon now, so happily he's out of the division. But it was like GBKHOLMEW. Oh, you look at him, please, no, don't give him the ball. And once Thailand's number 4 was called Sanaya Surya Jatarapattarapong. Now, I've got it off to an art now, but at the time, you take one, you break it down, hopefully, that's the only way you can do it. But there are so many foreign players now. I think the England manager has got about 35, 36 players to play from, unless they're playing in the Championship or something, which nobody ever gets picked for England in the Championship these days, do they?
Well, maybe they should. I don't know. It's a very competitive league.
Yeah, it is,
we're sitting in Yorkshire, so Leeds United back in the Premier League, that's good, where they should be, really. The 2 Sheffield clubs are not where they should be at all.
No.
When this goes out, they may be doing a little bit better. They can't be doing worse.
No, they can't. They haven't got a win between them this season.
Yeah, as we speak.
As we speak, yeah, absolutely.
As we speak here. And there are all sorts of off-field issues. And, I look across the board, and this is not just a dig at Sheffield Wednesday, and hopefully when people see this, their circumstances will have changed. ownership of clubs has changed so dramatically.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it used to be people who might not have been the most clued up football people, but they had their heart in the right place.
Yes.
They were figures in the community.
Oh, absolutely.
Now,
No. Again, they don't live in England. They probably never come to watch a match.
No.
You know, the guys from Arsenal, you know, I think his son goes to watch matches. Liverpool, you never see them at a game.
the heart and soul has gone out of that aspect of football, and hopefully the football regulator will help to bring it back. Well, there's loads more that we could have talked about, but I wanted to leave just time for you to perform your party piece.
How long have we got?
How long have we got? Well, you did it. Your record is 26 seconds.
Yeah. I won't do it in that now, I'm sure.
No, but I'll forgive you if you go over a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, John Helm. Mind you, we've got to clarify this. This is the 1981-82 season.
Absolutely.
And all 92 Football League clubs memorised and recited by this man here.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, the reason I changed it was because Dagenham and Redbridge and Forest Green Rovers came in. That had to finish. So this is 81-82, which was Arsenal, Aston Villa, Birmingham, Brighton, Coventry, Everton, Ipswich, Leeds, Liverpool, Man City, Man United, Middlesbrough, Nottingham Forest, Notts County, Southampton, Stoke, Sunderland, Swansea, Tottenham, West Brom, and Wolves, Barnsley, Blackburn, Bolton, Cambridge, Cardiff, Charlton, Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Derby, Grimsby, Leicester, Luton, Newcastle, Norwich, Oldham, Orient, QPR, Rotherham, Sheffield Wednesday, Shrewsbury, Watford, Wrexham, Brentford, Bristol Rovers, Burnley, Carwell, Chester, Chesterfield, Doncaster, Exeter, Fulham, Gillingham, Huddersfield, Lincoln, Millwall, Newport, Oxford, Plymouth, Portsmouth, Preston, Reading, Southend, Swindon, Walsall, Wimbledon, Accrington, Aldershot, Barnet, Blackpool, Bournemouth, Bradford City, Bury, Colchester, Crewe, Dartmouth, Halifax, Hartlepool, Hayford, Macclesfield, Mansfield, Northampton, Peterborough, Port Vale, Rochdale, Scarborough, Scunthorpe, Sheffield United, Stockport, Torquay, Wigan, Wickham and York. How many seconds was that?
I don't know.
Did we do all right?
We're
still on air.
We'll time it. We're still on air. I lost count. I was trying to count it down there. I think you were somebody around 35.
Well, not too bad at the age of 83, is it?
It's very
I can do cricket and rugby league as well, you know.
Yeah, we will. When we watch the tape, we'll time it. But I'm sure people who are watching this have done that. It's quite remarkable. And long may you continue, John. You know, not just one of the finest commentators, but one of the finest people. And always a pleasure to see around press boxes. Indeed, I go to games and suddenly I'm watching my team, you know, Chesterfield. You'll turn up on a Tuesday night randomly to watch.
That's one drawback of doing Lincoln every week. I can't quite get to some of the other clubs as often.
It's always good to see you, and thanks very much indeed. Good
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you very much. Enjoyed that.
There's some more where this comes from. My Sporting Life. Hope you've enjoyed this one, and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye.